Some of you may remember this image. It's seared into my mind. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey kneeling and performatively weeping at the golden casket of George Floyd in 2020. He basically got a state funeral for overdosing on fentanyl beneath the knee of police officer Derek Chauvin, who should be freed, by the way, after trying to steal from a convenience store with a counterfeit dollar bill, and spent the entire time shrieking "Mama, Mama," referring to his girlfriend, who was sitting in the car alongside his drug dealer. And for that, America lost its collective mind and underwent a cultural revolution for about 2 years. Cities were burned to the ground, dozens of people were killed, and it made its way over to the UK, where Keir Starmer, while leader of the opposition, and Angela Rayner, while then deputy leader, potentially our next prime minister, if Andy Burnham doesn't win his by-election, took the knee, saying, "We kneel with all of those opposing racism. Hashtag Black Lives Matter." Aaron Bastani called them legends in the comments, which take that's aged like milk. Is there a subversive movement that Aaron hasn't supported? He's still selling Londonistan hats, and he made Sarkar's career. So, despite his otherwise solid opinions on the moral depravity of the Labour Party as it stands, he was still cheerleading for this stuff way back when. I only like to point this stuff out as an interesting artifact to contrast with a horrific story that happened in the last 24 hours. And this is a young lad called Henry Nowak, 18-year-old student, and he was stabbed to death by a Sikh. The Sikhs that we are told that are just great model immigrants, cause no problems. Look, I don't want to pick a fight with Tommy Robinson here, but he has said before that if Islam weren't in Britain, we wouldn't be having any conversations about immigration, and I'm sorry, that's just not true. Even I've said before, knife crime isn't the problem because of the knives, because the Boy Scouts don't go on stabbing sprees. Sikhs manage to keep their swords sheathed, and they have them at all times, but in this case, Henry Nowak was on his way home from a night out, 11 o'clock, left, wasn't too drunk, when he was attacked by a stranger called Vikram Digwa, 23, allegedly attacked, with his 8-inch Shastar Sikh ceremonial blade. Digwa was caught on camera saying, "I am a bad man," before the fatal stabbing. He's now on trial accused of murder, alongside his mother, Kiran Kaur, 53, who is accused of assisting an offender. Prosecutors said she went to the scene before running home with the knife to stash it among an arsenal of weapons there. So, yet again, an example of the clan mentality of members of the Indian subcontinent who cover for their sons, brothers, cousins. They know the crimes they commit against our people and cover them up. There was the recent example of a Pakistani Labour mayor or councillor who covered for her son, who knew that her son had sexually assaulted a child, was sending her threats, had filmed it, and she told her son in Urdu, when the police showed up at the door, to hide his phone. And it just so happens that when they reviewed the police body cam footage, someone spoke Urdu and realised that she was assisting him in trying to cover up the crime. They've both gone to prison, fortunately. Southampton Crown Court heard Nowak was in his first term studying accountancy and finance at Southampton University when he went for a night out in the city on the 3rd of December 2023 with his friends in the football team. So he sounds like an upstanding student. Good guy, would have got a good job, paid his taxes, despite, of course, the DEI legislation that discriminates against him in favour of criminals like George Floyd or now his alleged murderer, Vikram Digwa, who never needed to be in the country in the first place to take this young lad's life. Out with his friends, member of the football team, probably would have made a really good dad. And now he's dead. Dead for no reason. He went home around 11 p.m, having drunk less than the legal limit to drive, so wasn't even remotely tipsy. He was speaking to his friends on Snapchat when he came across Digwa. He was stabbed after Nowak tried to climb a fence to escape, and Digwa was aggressively pursuing him, leaving a trail of blood behind him. And here's why I decided to compare this story to George Floyd. Police were called to the scene, but they arrested Mr. Nowak because Digwa claimed he'd been racially abused. He used the magic words, and Nowak was arrested, despite having been stabbed, because the police cared more about racism than the armed, raving madman who stabbed this kid. Nowak was handcuffed. He then passed out and bled to death in the street. The police are responsible here for his death. They should all be charged with manslaughter. Because, for some reason, racism matters more than murder in our country. Prosecutor Nicholas Lobenberg said, put simply, Henry drowned in his own blood with his lung having been cut by the knife going 8 centimetres into him. Vikram Digra raises the defence of self-defence. He persisted that Henry perpetrated a drunken racist attack. He says he doesn't recall exactly how the fatal wound came to be inflicted. Okay, I think he's lying. But even so, let's say he said a naughty word to this Sikh man. Who cares? You stabbed him to death. It's like this live streamer that's been going around at the moment. What's his name? Chud the Builder, right? I find this sort of IRL content, doing stunts in person, being obnoxious, being abrasive, really lowbrow. But he's been going around saying the gamer word to African Americans. And eventually he got attacked for it, and he shot a guy, and he's protesting self-defense here, and he was of course arrested for it. And no matter how provocative his live streams are, people have noticed that there are some words which mean that the authorities will permit minorities, their protected classes, to do violence to you. I just don't think that's the case. I don't care what Henry Nowak could have said to this guy. I'm not inclined to believe him, considering he stabbed him to death, and his mother tried to, allegedly, attempt to cover up the crime. So I think this is just another excuse, another exercise in saving face in Izzat farming. But even if he had said a deluge of slurs towards this guy, I don't care. He shouldn't have been stabbed to death. This guy should have never been in the country. Henry Nowak should still be alive, and he would have been if the police cared more about saving his life than about racism, than about the hurt feelings of imported, violent, tribal minority groups. In the video played to the jury, Nowak can be heard saying "Hello, car" and singing to himself before yawning, with the footage then cutting to show Digwa walking away from him. Nowak is then heard saying, "In it, bad man. What bad man? You're a bad man. Say you're a bad man. Go on." Because they got in some sort of verbal altercation. Digwa replied, "I am a bad man," to which Nowak replied, "Are you a..." insulting him, before the footage cut off. Just a piece of advice. Just stay away. Don't even engage in verbal altercations with these people. Just get away from them. Because it's not worth trying to get into a war of words with people that have fundamentally no impulse control and no regard for human life, especially if it's part of their outgroup. There is nothing that Iriana Zarutska could have said to DeCarlos Brown Jr. to not make him stab her in the neck, for example. If she had just taken the appropriate precautions and sat very, very far away from those people, not been in that environment, that's the only way her life could have been saved. But it's not her fault. It's the fault of the people who didn't imprison that man. Now, it's the fault of the authorities, the police, who decided to cuff Nowak instead of his alleged murderer, and of the authorities that brought Digwa into our country. The prosecutor said at the scene Digwa denied stabbing Nowak and instead claimed he had been racially abused and attacked by a drunken man. But, Lobenberg said, he didn't seek help for the man he'd injured with his sizable knife. Instead, he just accused him of being racist and being drunk. So, here's a point made by Morgoth. Where's this guy's movement? Where's his civil rights representation? Where's his massive march, his summer of love? Where's his mural? Where's Keir Starmer taking the knee from him? They haven't said a peep. Where were the protests for Wayne Broadhurst? There was, of course, an outpouring of shock after a Somalian went and stabbed 2 Jewish guys in Golders Green. Fortunately, they survived, you know. Wayne Broadhurst didn't. Wayne Broadhurst was murdered in broad daylight walking his dog by an Afghan that was granted indefinite leave to remain because, among other ministers, Robert Jenrick's efforts to ensure that as many Afghans were crammed into our country as possible while the public didn't know about it because the government took out a legal super injunction against the press from reporting on it, while they wrote articles saying it was a national project. Where's the sympathy for Henry Nowak? Where is the state response, the demand for accountability for the police, the demand to do the work for justice? Where is it? And there won't be because he's white. That's it. It's all confected outrage. It's all anti-white grievance politics. It wasn't about ensuring accountability. And there won't be anything. And it's not because people aren't outraged. It's because the same level of in-group solidarity, the ability to collectively grieve, is denied for the indigenous population, whereas the disproportionately violent minority groups, whether that be Black Americans, or whether that be the imported tribal minorities in Britain, they are allowed a collective sense of identity. They are endorsed to have one by pro-diversity legislation, by equalities legislation, by hate speech protections. The sort of mentality endemic to police training manuals that says accusations of racism are to be weighted with more gravity than violent crime. And it was that mentality, that unilateral tribalism, that concern, the premium placed on the hurt feelings of minorities. That's what got this kid killed. There will be no movement. We're on our own. We just have to take our own side. We can't expect the state to have any sympathy when upstanding young lad stabbed to death in the street by a man who never needed to be in our country in the first place. There is no charity that represents our people, our interests, our country. This is all being done at our expense. Of both our income and our lives. There's now, grieving parents out there. And this happened a couple of years ago, remember? This is in 2023. Where was the national news coverage of this guy dying in police custody? Nowhere to be seen. So, this harrowing tale provides one lesson. That if the purpose of a system is what it does, the purpose of the current law is to allow you to get killed and for the diversity doing it to get away with it.